the right word I wanted, but and the question was, why would they, in the context of Chris Whitty and Patrick Barnes, the notion that they are seeking to bamboozle or mislead or deceive the population, which is the argument the Daily Mail has been making all week. This notion of why would they, I found fascinating and incredibly revealing. And the more I thought about it, and the more I listened to some of the, should we say, the more, or read some of the more blowhardy commentary, by which I mean people who like to make powerful emotional points, usually involving a putative or a potential flashpoint to fight, the other not, can't bear them. They seem to be acting in a fashion that's even more dishonest and disingenuous than usual, because what you might call lockdown scepticism, or people questioning the wisdom of the government's policy, as we saw yesterday in the House of Commons, often people who cheerleaded for Boris Johnson, who carried Boris Johnson on their metaphorical shoulders, and this certainly holds true for people in the media. They carried Johnson on their shoulders into the chamber, into number 10 Downing Street, and now already they've thrown their toys out of the pram and spat their dummy because they are worried that some of the policies designed to keep poor people alive might actually affect the income of rich people. So that economic harm argument is one that we've examined quite closely. It is, I'm afraid, a matter of fact and record that people who claimed economic harm was to be welcomed, actively welcomed and sought in the context of Brexit, seem to be precisely the same people who are now arguing passionately that we couldn't possibly risk economic harm if all we were trying to do was keep people alive and minimise the spread of a lethal virus. So in the context of blue passports and fish, economic harm good. In the context of keeping your mum alive, economic harm bad. And where that leads us, and this is where I find things simultaneously fascinating and depressing, where that leads us is to a place where you have to pretend that there's an enemy. I don't think you have met anybody who would be what you might call enthusiastic about a lockdown, wherever you are. Obviously, this week focus is on England, but wherever you are, have you met anybody who would be leading out their window? Call the sort of Murdochian mob who don't realise it often, but who are dedicated solely to keeping the money supplies flowing for the richest people in the country. They don't have an enemy at the moment. The ones shouting from the rooftops about being anti-lockdown, very passionately anti-lockdown, they don't have an enemy because nobody is passionately pro-lockdown, so they have to pretend. And sometimes I think they're lying to themselves rather than lying to you. This idea that there's a lobby of people, there's a significant caucus of commentators and punters who are really excited and really want this thing. Yay, it's going to be great. We're not going to be able to see each other for months. I never liked you anyway. It's fantastic. And it's nuts. Even by the standards of the last few years, certainly by the standards of the last few months, it's absolutely nuts. So you've got, and the public polling, I said to you yesterday, is completely at odds with what most of the right-wing media is doing. But you know me, I'm a grizzled old soul now. I've fought too many battles to cling on to my optimism, and if the right-wing media is swimming against 70 to 80% public opinion, then I'm afraid it's usually public opinion that buckles first. You keep getting that, look at Brexit, you keep getting these nonsensical messages pumped into the public space. Eventually people start believing them. That is what it is. But there's no enemy. You probably haven't noticed this. I hope I'm not doing you a disservice when I tell you that, because it takes me a moment to register. If you read somebody in the Telegraph, usually, or the Mail, wanging on about economic damage and we can't afford this. Oh, look, we've got Rocco Forte to tell us what he thinks about, because he's a renowned virologist, or we've got Mr. Weatherspoons to share his views on how you cope with global pandemics. And you don't pause, because we've been doing it for so long. you know me, I'm going to blame Brexit for it, but we've been treating idiots like geniuses for so long in this country, because the only people you could get to publicly promote the idea of leaving the European Union were either nutcases or idiots. Generally speaking, there are exceptions. I'm related to some. But I'm talking about the promoters of it, not the followers, the con men, not the con. So we're still doing it now. On what possible planet do you ask Mr. Weatherspoon about a global pandemic? Well, on the planet where you ask him about free trade agreements and single markets, other issues he doesn't understand. So we'll park that for the minute and focus instead upon the fact that there is no enemy and they don't know what to do. So someone has said to them, well, rich people are going to be hurt by this, and their immediate knee-jerk response is, oh my God, we've got to stop it. And you then say, stop who? Those people over there who really, really want lockdown. And then you look over there and you think, hang on a minute, there's nobody there, mate. And you wanted this geezer in government. You're one of the people that said we'd be living in the sunlit uplands by now. You're one of the people that said that those of us who thought Boris Johnson would pose a grave and potent danger to our country were hysterical. And you're the fellas that sold him to us. And it's taking you about 2.5 minutes to turn on him, because sovereignty doesn't mean denial of reality, or sovereignty doesn't mean everybody, the only political decisions that will ever be taken are ones that you agree with. So you've got an unelected bureaucrat essentially running a government that is exercising sovereignty to bring in a lockdown. You don't like the lockdown, and suddenly you don't like it. Well, we are where we are. So let's focus on that. Let's keep that in mind. There isn't anybody on the other side, even as they encourage you once again to pick up your muskets and your rotten tomatoes and start lobbying. The Daily Express has run a piece online saying something like, and you'll have to check it because you won't believe me. So the Daily Express online has run a piece saying something like, Joe Biden's going to be very bad for Britain and it's all Ramona's fault. And even by the standards of like algorithms that make up headlines, I did a double take on that one. You know, like you get those little games online where you just insert the word flooded or Muslims or immigrants or whatever it might be, and it generates a Daily Mail headline. So it's something like yogurt is corrupting our children and it's all Diane Abbott's fault, or something like that. That's real, that one in the Express. Joe Biden will be bad for Britain and it's all Ramona's fault. Someone got paid to write that. Real money, pounds. And there isn't. How do I know this? Because I get the impression sometimes people think that there is. Great evidence, down with science. Oh, I don't like that science. Oh no. Let's go back to, I don't know, reading the entrails of chickens to decide what we should do next, or possibly reading tea leaves. Don't like the science. And I don't know what happens next. I really don't. Do you? If there's no enemy, and yet significant swathes of the British right-wing pro-Brexit media is currently telling you there is an enemy, what happens next? Nobody is enthusiastic or desperate for lockdown. Everyone is being dragged into it reluctantly. Some of us with our eyes open, some of us with our heads up our backside. And those of us with our eyes open just take it on good faith. I mean, the weirdest thing is nobody's been more critical of this government's handling of the global pandemic than me. I mean, nobody has been more critical of Boris Johnson than me when he was getting it wrong. And he continues, in my view, to get it wrong. This lockdown is too late. The idea that it's too much is heartbreakingly stupid, because it will kill people. I was sitting in a restaurant the other day, and very sort of well-to-do seeming bunch having a business lunch at the next table, and they were all expressing cynicism about the lockdown because they didn't think that we should do anything except protect vulnerable people. And you kind of, thankfully, not the kind of person to interrupt somebody else's lunch, but you have to sometimes resist the urge to grab them by the ears and shake their little heads, because the hospitals will not be full of vulnerable people. The hospitals will be full of people that the doctors and nurses there are hoping to keep alive. it's not, it just doesn't exist. This ludicrous notion that you can put vulnerable people in a box and everybody else can just get on with life as normal. Humanity doesn't admit that possibility, let alone logic. And yet, because people seem to be unable to process the simplest stories now, unless they can be turned into a fight, we're here with, a significant swathe of the British right-wing media shouting, down with these pro-lockdown pansies. And there aren't any. There literally aren't any. Those of us who believe, or those of us who have come to a considered conclusion that not only should we have followed Sage's advice to do the 2-week version a month ago, but doing the 4-week version now is pretty much our best chance. We don't want to be in this situation, so why would anyone pretend that we do? So in the spirit of the question about Valance and Whitty, which was, okay, if they are deliberately misleading the British public and manipulating data, as the Daily Mail has alleged, the only question you should really be asking yourself is, why would they do that? And the absolute absence of any cogent or coherent answers to that question proves that they're not doing it. It's Colombo again. What's the motive? Just one more thing. So let's do it with this, okay? If Boris Johnson is wrong to bring in this lockdown, again, late, again, possibly too little, but definitely too late, if he is doing it for nefarious or unintelligent reasons, what are they? 0345 6060973, because people who never move beyond the what and into the why are responsible for most of the madness unfolding around the world at the moment. I don't care what you think, I want to know why you think it. So, if Boris Johnson is up to no good, as these people are already suggesting, despite having spent the last 5 years treating him like the Messiah, suddenly they've realised he's a very naughty boy. If Boris Johnson is up to no good, what is his motive? Now, you can either tell me your honest view on this. Well, James, the reason why he's bringing in a lockdown that is a terrible mistake and will damage the economy and not keep anybody alive is because he's swapped from shredded wheat to Rice Krispies. I'll take any answer you've got. Or and report on what other people have told you. I haven't come across many. Probably because they know I'll say war out and do that. Oh, it's disgraceful. Boris Johnson's all these lockdown forecasts. Care about anyone except himself. And if the decision to go into lockdown has been taken by a man who is in charge of a country and only cares about himself, you can be fairly clear that he has been convinced it has to be done. It will make him unpopular with his own MPs and his own supporters. He has been completely convinced that it has to be done. And do you know what? That's good enough for me. Especially because he's so unreliable and untrustworthy. If he's doing something that's going to make him unpopular with his hardcore backbenchers, then he's been convinced that it has to be done. So what reason do you have, or what reason have you heard he's doing something so apparently wrong? 0345 60609. And it's a weird one, isn't it? I'm not necessarily defending Boris Johnson, but I'm certainly inviting you to criticise him, and I am strapping on my pads and slinging my bat over my shoulder. It's 10:80.
LBC.
This is the sound of business owners bossing their day with Sage.
Fish delivery bossed.
Hello, mate. Set smart TV to record the football later.
You gotta be joking.
at the beach club, Blue Beach Club, Malia, and that's it for the moment. Catch you later.